Brad Underwood says that this year's team can make a Final Four run. And you know what? Brad Underwood is right.
You are Locked On Illini, your daily podcast on the Illinois Fighting Illini. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome one, welcome all to another Monday morning edition of Locked On Illini. My name is Sunny Verma. You can find me on all your favorite socials. Do a quick search for Locked On Illini and send a message and say hello. Thank you all so much for making us your first listen each and every day. And remember, whether you're listening to me on YouTube, you can find us on audio. If you're listening to us on audio, you can find us on YouTube. Over the weekend, those of you who missed the shows over the weekend, we surpassed 2,000 subscribers on YouTube. So I did want to take 1 second and just say how grateful I am. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Super Bowl 59 is here, and there's no better way to make every play more exciting than with FanDuel Sportsbook. New customers can bet just $5, and if you win, you'll score $200 in bonus bets. Download the app or head to FanDuel.com to get started. So Illinois defeats Northwestern on Sunday, a 9-point victory that really felt more than that if you watched about 37 of the minutes of that game. Illinois was dominant for the most part, and it was really in particular the defense that just looked really, really fantastic. It was a collective team effort with 5 guys scoring in double figures and 1 guy just falling 2 points short in Trey White having 8 points. But what was notable to me was Brad Underwood, after the game, a media member asked Brad about this team and its future prospects. And Brad had this to say: "I'm not afraid to say we, Illinois, can make the Final Four, but we need to be whole. We're a better team since the Alabama loss." So I know this is going to create some chatter on your favorite social media if it hasn't already. Illinois is very much a lightning rod talking points of controversy. You know, Brad likes to say and be hyperbolic sometimes. And, you know, other fan bases, I feel like right now are kind of getting sick and tired of it. It's not just Brad, but it's a lot of the national writers who really, really like this Illinois team. And they anoint this Illinois team in tiers, 1 or 2 among the college basketball best, whereas other Big Ten fan bases are understandably a little frustrated, saying, hey, look, this team's lost 4 times in the conference already. Can the attention get off Illinois? And for the most part, I think it has, but that could actually be a very good thing for this Illini basketball team. Look, I wanted to win the Big Ten Conference coming into this year. I really think that it could have helped Brad in his quest to eventually win a Big Ten Coach of the Year trophy, which still eludes him. And I think at this point it's going to probably elude him again for yet another year. But ultimately, what we want as Illini fans is another successful March. We want to make it to that second weekend, Sweet 16, or go even further than last year's team did, which is the Elite 8. And that is also Brad Underwood's goal. Okay, you know it because it came straight from his mouth. Last year, in the offseason, he talked about walking off the court in that Elite 8 loss against UConn. And he told his coaches, like, wow, if that's what a Final Four team looks like, we have some work to do. And work is exactly what he did. He got the team to go get taller. He brought in more shooting. Now, whether the shooting has worked out or not, who knows? And he brought more NBA-level talent from the team last year. Last year, keep in mind, was one of the most successful seasons we've had in recent memory. Now, Illinois has gotten off to a somewhat of a struggle this year, I guess. People tend to forget that Illinois was ranked number 4 in the Big Ten preseason media poll. Okay, so it's not like they're projected to be the number 1 team in the Big Ten Conference and they're faltering. No, this is a brand new team with 10 new players, and they're having good games and bad when it comes to gelling. You see them beat top teams in the Big Ten Conference by 30 at their home court, and then we also have teams who were considerably favored over come into the State Farm Center and beat up what looks like a sleepy Illinois team. But let's talk about the Final Four. Is that feasible? And I'll be honest, and maybe I am biased, but absolutely, I really do think my mindset on this team really has not changed all that much. The only adjustment I've made from the preseason to now is the team is not as deep as I thought. Okay, Kerry Booth is not going to be the vital role player that I thought he was going to be. So really, this team runs 8, on a good day, 9 deep. And with Tomislav Ivicic now injured, well, it's going to basically put the spotlight on Morez Johnson. And that's where I want to begin with the idea of a Final Four being a possibility. We saw Morez play one of his best games of the season on Sunday against Northwestern. And the reason being is he got to play basketball. He got to play for 34 minutes and he produced. I truly do think that I love Morez Johnson, and my everydayers in the Discord know it. My everydayers who watch Locked On Illini every single day, by the way, love you guys, know this. I love Morez Johnson. He's my favorite player on this team. He's been one of my favorite players for a very, very long time. But sometimes he does look like a Big Ten freshman, in particular in that Maryland game where he got into foul trouble very early and really wasn't able to put up much of a fight against Derek Queen or Julian Reese. But what if, let's say, hypothetically, Tommy is gone for the next 5 games. Morez Johnson continues to produce good basketball on the court. What could happen is the more he plays, and the more he plays well, he could start earning the respect of some of those Big Ten officials who are kind of quick to the whistle when it comes to Morez. Now, I'm not saying that Illinois is getting a bad call or Morez is getting a bad call. I've been watching the Big Ten Conference for 25, 30 years at this point, and this is just the thing. Big Ten freshmen tend to get a quick whistle from the referees. That's been something that's been happening since I started watching this conference. So I'm not sitting here saying that they're picking on Morez, but with more playing time and him establishing his name a little bit more in the conference, there is hopes for me that maybe the referees are willing to adjust or maybe even swallow that whistle a little bit when it comes to what his status is, being a freshman in the Big Ten. The reason I ultimately think that this team absolutely can make a Final Four is its defense. Its defense coming into Sunday was the 13th best in the entire country, even when their offense is struggling and the shots aren't going down, which I'll get to right after this. The defense is still there. And when you're a good defensive team and you have the offensive firepower that Illinois does, of course, you're going to be mentioned as one of the teams that could make it further and further in March. And, sometimes it just comes down to what bracket you're in. And finally, let's address the shooting. Illinois coming into Northwestern game was second to last when it comes to Big Ten three-point shooting. And it's something which, again, it's a conundrum in the sense where Brad Underwood built this team to shoot three-pointers. That's all he wants this team to do. No matter what, no matter if they shot 50 three-pointers at the end of the game, in the post-game press conference, Brad Underwood will tell you that he wished they shot more. That's just the strategy this team has implemented. However, right now, the shots aren't going in. And with us being almost 50% through the Big Ten season, how long are we going to wait? If they continue to shoot this way, then I'll be honest. No, I don't think this is going to be a Final Four team. This can absolutely be a second weekend team. This could be a Sweet 16 team. But if those shots continue to not fall at the percentage we need them to fall, then it really doesn't matter. We'll be able to beat the teams that we're supposed to beat, but eventually we're going to run into a number 1 seed or a number 2 seed who's going to have our number, and we're just not going to be able to keep up offensively. Let me know your thoughts. I know over the last 7 days, there's been a roller coaster of a ride when it comes to the Illini fan base. But again, you guys know, I've said this on the show before, this season was going to be a roller coaster ride, in my opinion, because of the youth and the turnover on this team. But do you agree with Brad? Do you think this team is capable of making a Final Four run or not? Or what do you think the ceiling is? Do you think maybe next year is the year that they make the Final Four? I'm very curious to hear your guys' thoughts. This is a message from sponsor Intuit, TurboTax. Taxes was waiting and wondering and worrying if you were going to get any money back, and then waiting, wondering, and worrying some more. Now, Taxes is matching with a TurboTax expert who can do your taxes as soon as today. An expert who gives your taxes their undivided attention as they work on your return, while you get real-time updates on their progress so you can focus on your day. An expert who will find you every deduction possible and file every form, every investment, everything with 100% accuracy, all so you can get the most money back guaranteed. No waiting, no wondering, no worries. Now this is Taxes. Get an expert now on TurboTax.com. Only available with TurboTax Live full service real-time updates only in iOS mobile app. See guaranteed details at turbotax.com/guarantees. Okay, so this is the Monday episode, and we've had a pretty crazy week here as Illini fans in regards to basketball, at least. And so I wanted to check in with my friend JR. JR, okay, I know you're going to tell me not great news, but it's not that we don't already know it. Illinois with a very disappointing loss to Maryland. There's some reasons why that may have occurred, but I do feel like, Michigan State with another victory over Rutgers, they're kind of separating themselves, Purdue, same thing, from the rest of the conference. What are your thoughts just from the basketball over the weekend?
Yeah, I mean, when I saw Illinois lose to Maryland in the fashion they did, I thought, man, they're going to take a big dip in my power rankings this week. And then every other team decided to lose games as well. You had you had Purdue lose to Ohio State, who is a good team by the numbers, but by the record this season, they're not very good, and they've lost a number of close games, and Ohio State was able to take them down at Mackey, right? I mean, Maryland is a better team than Ohio State this season. So that is, in my opinion, maybe not, it doesn't look as bad, but that's a worse loss than what Illinois endured. And then you saw Michigan, they dropped one to Purdue. People can argue on if they should move up or down in the rankings based off only one loss. Wisconsin, they lost to UCLA, who they've been on a bad kind of streak so far. So when I went into this, I thought, I'm going to have to move Illinois down a few spots. We'll get to them and how far they move down, but it might not be as much as some people might think, just because other Big Ten teams are struggling right now too. It's not like everybody is 2-0 on the week or anything like that.
Okay, let's start from the bottom. Let's hear.
All right, at the bottom, really, really bad so far, so we don't have to talk about them very long. But Washington, and then Rutgers, Nebraska has lost quite a few in a row. Then Penn State, I moved Minnesota up. Minnesota 3-0 in their last 3 games. It's been
so that's actually who I wanted to talk about. Minnesota.
Okay.
I mean, 3-0, like you said, they look like they were going to be clearly the worst team in the Big Ten Conference with the way the season started, and here they go, 3 straight wins, and I believe all 3 are top 100 KenPom, top 100 KenPom victories. I mean, they're starting to look pretty decent. And Ben Johnson, I've always personally liked Ben. I think he's in a position where Minnesota just doesn't care enough to invest financially into that basketball program. I mean, they're fighting for it on the football side. So the basketball side at this point is just getting scraps. But I love what he's done as of late.
Yeah, Ben Johnson's done a really good job these last few games. Dawson Garcia has been, a godsend for them as well. I mean, the way he's playing right now, the mismatches he can create, seems like any team that's going to Minnesota is having a hard time. And there's been a few games that they haven't been able to pull out, but these last 2 at Minnesota, they were able to pull out. For me, even though it's not as good of a team, going to Iowa was an impressive win for me as well. Iowa was 11-1, I believe, when they played them at Iowa, and their only other loss at home was to Iowa State, who's been good this year. So for me, you go into Iowa and you defeat them at home. That's a good victory and something that they should hang their hat on. So when Minnesota beat, Michigan, I didn't hardly move them up because I thought, okay, this is a fluke. Michigan, you just had a bad game. But I see him beat at Iowa. Then I see him win. Who's out of the one that they beat? Why am I blanking on it? Oregon.
Yeah.
They beat Oregon, so I mean, for Minnesota, it's been a good stretch, and people could argue maybe Oregon isn't as good as they thought they were, or anything like that. But still, I'm high on this team. If Dawson Garcia keeps playing at first team Big Ten level, which he's been doing the past few games, you can see Minnesota keep climbing in the rankings a little bit more.
I agree. Who else we got next?
All right, next we got after that Indiana, tough losses for them this week. Then Iowa. Northwestern, unfortunately for them, they drop a little bit. Then USC, Ohio State, Oregon, UCLA, Maryland, Michigan.
Let's talk about Maryland again.
Okay.
They upset Illinois at the State Farm Center, and Illinois got a lot of flack from a lot of other fan bases. I talked about this before, JR. I think there's a lot of backlash on Illinois right now just because, despite them not being atop the standings in the Big Ten Conference, still, when it comes to the John Rothsteins, the Fantas, all of them, when they refer to Illinois, they always say, "Oh, this is a team that could win it all." And I feel like a lot of the fan bases are just getting tired of hearing that. It's not like the Illinois fan base is all that easy to deal with to begin with. So I feel like all of that just adds together. But so I think, with all the drama that came with that Michigan State loss and the perceived whining of a lot of the Illini fan base, then them coming up and just showing up flat against Maryland, it was an easy target to target Illinois fans, essentially. With Maryland beating Indiana, they're starting to look a little bit more respectable. I mean, their analytics were always respectable. It was just their away record that they were struggling with. But now they've got 2 in a row. So let me know your thoughts on the Terrapins.
Yeah, I mean, they struggled with Indiana in this one today. So, I mean, they came out with the win, but I mean, Indiana had a chance to win that game at the end of it, and then they just decided not run a play. I mean,
they did Indiana stuff.
Yeah, they did Indiana stuff. So, I mean, I guess I give Maryland credit for the win, but I really don't think that much of it. And then on the Illinois side, it's kind of the problem with Illinois that I've been having a hard time with how to rank them. Like right now they have they're 5-4, 6-4, I guess now in the Big Ten. So it's not the best Big Ten record, but you look at their losses and there's reasons behind every single one. I'm not going to call them excuses because I do think you have to point things out. But then on top of that, there's also other Big Ten teams, like I pointed out to you earlier, that aren't doing all that well either. When Purdue is losing to Ohio State at home, and then you have Wisconsin losing to UCLA, it's like, okay, I want to ding Illinois, but at the end of the day, can I really move Maryland all that up high? Because at the same time, Illinois didn't have a big man, and Maryland has 2 big men, and they came in and they just kind of had the perfect storm, and then they almost lose to Indiana after that. So it's like, I moved Maryland up, but at the same time, sometimes you just get a perfect storm, and I don't know how high I can really move them up because I don't think they're better than Michigan. I don't think they're better than Wisconsin. So that's who I have after Maryland. I have Michigan, Wisconsin, and then this is where Illinois comes in at number 3. They only moved down 1 spot for me, and then Purdue and Michigan State.
Yeah, and it's hard to argue with 1 or 2, in my opinion. At this point, it looks like the conference is going to run through one of those 2 teams. I'm really intrigued between Illinois and Michigan at this point. Michigan, to me, at times can look like the best team in the conference, but at other times you can see the clear weaknesses that they have. They were just, as you mentioned, it wasn't even close in that game at Mackey. Now, granted, a lot of that had to do was probably thanks to the Buckeyes, beating Purdue. There's no way Purdue was going to lose twice in a row at Mackey. But, Michigan's one of those teams that I'm just kind of watching from afar. I've said it on this show before that I thought the conference would come down to Illinois or Michigan. It looks like Illinois is out of at least the conference title race right now, but Michigan's still somewhat in it. But Michigan State, man, they're just a team that keeps winning, and it's one of those. They're not beating the great teams right now, and they've got a very Indiana football-like schedule when it comes to the Big Ten conference, but the bottom line is, as we talked about it, Illinois lost to some of those teams, right? And Michigan State's just beating them, and they're beating them pretty soundly. So at this point, I don't think you can argue they're the number 1 team in the conference.
Yeah, I mean, they're not number 1 in the rank, the numbers and stuff like that. And I think that's probably indicative of they haven't, played the toughest conference schedule so far. And that's not really going to get fixed anytime soon because their next few games are Minnesota, at USC, at UCLA. Now, the West Coast, away games is going to be difficult, but also UCLA not been playing great the past few weeks. They're playing better lately, but who's to say the next few weeks they don't, the next week they don't just start stinking again, and then they go in this game against Michigan State, and then USC is playing better, but there's still holes on that team and stuff that Eric Musselman has to figure out that Michigan State could exploit. You're really not going to see Michigan State get into that hard stretch of their season until the very end when it's going to decide if they win the Big Ten or not. February 15th. Listen to this end of the season right here, Sonny. You have at Illinois, Purdue, at Michigan, at Maryland, Wisconsin, at Iowa, Michigan.
Oh, wow.
That is really, really tough there to end the season. 7 straight quad 1 games, and over half of those are away games. So it's going to be really, really tough for Michigan to end the season. They should be winning games right now. They need to be, because if I'm being honest, I know Michigan State's really good. I don't know if they're going to do much better than 4 wins out of that stretch right there, because that's a really tough stretch.
Oh, wow. Careful. You don't want to get Spartans fans targeting you. Trust
That's
me.
fine. They got mad at me last year when I said they wouldn't make the tournament, so they can get mad at me again. That's fine.
All right after this, we're going to preview Illinois' upcoming week with Nebraska and Ohio State. Super Bowl 59 is here. One game, two teams, endless possibilities. And there's no better way to make every play more exciting than with FanDuel Sportsbook. Whether it's predicting the first touchdown, calling the MVP, or even betting on the coin toss, FanDuel makes it easy to get in on the action. With live betting all game long, you can adjust your bets as the game unfolds and feel the thrill from kickoff to the final whistle. The live betting feature lets you stay involved no matter what happens on the field, and the app is super easy to navigate. Plus, knowing that you can place a $5 bet and potentially win $200 in bonus bets for the Super Bowl, that's icing on the cake. Download the app or head to FanDuel.com to get started. Bet just $5, and if you win, you'll score $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Bet with FanDuel, official partner of the Super Bowl 59. All right, JR, I know they're Nebraska basketball and usually not taken very seriously, but Nebraska does have a history of playing really well at home. Having said that, they've struggled as of late, but still, I feel like this is one of those games that Illinois, right now, they just don't have any room for error, and they need to be locked in for this game against Nebraska because Nebraska does historically tell you that they play well at home.
Yeah, no, they have played well at home historically. They're right now they're on a 6-game losing streak. Only 2 of those have been at home, so it has been a rough stretch for Nebraska. But you are getting them at home right now, which is a difficult situation. But what Nebraska really needs to clear up is this defense. I mean, oh my word, how putrid, how awful has this defense been throughout this run? The last 5-6 games that they've played, teams have just been scoring at will because they don't have their rotations right. They don't have any rim protection on the inside, and quite frankly, the on-ball defense has just not been good. You throw a ball screen at these guys on the outside, and it's not going to look good for them. So there are probably changes coming to the starting lineup. I think Bryce Williams, you're going to probably see him more at point as the primary ball handler in this game, which I think is probably a good decision for him. I think Bryce Williams is more of a playmaker than the other guys you have, at least with the ball there, but he is a new ball handler, new primary ball handler for him, so turnovers could become an issue. This is an area that Illinois needs to capitalize on, really go after him, play some hard defense, which you saw against the Northwestern team, right? You saw much more hustle, you saw much more aggressive play on the defensive end as well. Merez Johnson really seemed like he came into himself, and Nebraska really struggles to score, really struggles with their big men so much. So it's kind of a nice little matchup for Illinois not having Ivisic back yet. But this is still going to be a tough test. You're going to Nebraska. They can click it on at any point in time. They can do better. So we're going to have to see that happen. But I like this matchup for Illinois. We'll see if they can capitalize on the poor defense for Nebraska lately.
And then following Nebraska next Sunday, they'll be playing your Ohio State Buckeyes, a team that, I just feel like is one of the, how do I say this politely, one of the softer teams in the conference. I mean, they can win the big games. Again, they went to Purdue and won a game at Mackey. So it's not like you can take them, for granted. But Ohio State, I feel like it's just a team that if you show them early that, you're going to push them around, that you're going to play physical and that you're going to go all out, maybe you're putting yourself in a pretty good shape.
Yeah, Ohio State's issue this season is they got a couple big men who just weren't ready for the spotlight and the time to play, substantial minutes at the 4 and the 5 spot. Then you put them in the Big Ten, and it's like, ooh, yikes! This is not a good matchup for guys that are not ready for this yet. Aaron Bradshaw and Sean Stewart, talented players, they can do a lot of things well, but yeah, they're going through this grind of the Big Ten season right now. I will say Devin Royal has been very good for the Buckeyes, very good scorer. He does everything he possibly can on defense, but he's also a 3 that's playing the 4 sometimes for Ohio State, and he's only 6'6". So, when you got your 4 in college basketball the same size as point guards in the NBA, it's like, yikes, this is not going well, especially against a team that is as NBA laden as the Illinois Fighting Illini is. So, really, what you're looking at here, though, is you're going to need to see Illinois get out and run and try to control the pace of this game. Ohio State has decreased their pace like crazy the last few games just because of all the injuries that they've sustained. Michi Johnson isn't playing right now. He's still away from the team. Devin Royal was out for one game. You've seen a number of guys that have kind of gone out and come back in the lineup. And so, I see what your comment is about soft and stuff like that. And I don't know if it's so much soft as it is injury, but, quite frankly, when you watch him, you do think soft. So I'm not going to say you're wrong on that comment. But as far as I'm concerned, this is another game that Illinois should win. The strategy here seems pretty obvious to me, but you never know. I mean, Ohio State could get crazy from three-point land, and they could get a LeBron James performance from Micah Parrish. That was really what got them the game. A LeBron James performance from Micah Parrish and a Sky Clark performance from Braden Smith combined for a Purdue loss in that game. You never want to have LeBron James on one team and freshman Sky Clark on the other team. That's a bad matchup.
No, you're right on. Okay, JR, before I let you go, can you let the folks know once again where they can find your work?
Yeah, the Big Ten Huddle. We have a football podcast. We also have basketball podcasts. Each channel we're putting out content on all the time, so go check them out. The Big Ten Huddle podcast. There's a basketball channel, football channel. Just subscribe to them both. I mean, honestly, we put out a lot of good stuff. We just did our quarterback rankings in our most recent episode, so if you want to see quarterback rankings, see where Luke Altmaier shows up, I'll give you a hint. He's in the top 3, and we got a lot of good things to say about the Illini right now because they're going to have a good season coming up, so I think your fans will like that.
I'm going to have to go watch as soon as we're done recording here. Thanks, JR. See you next week.
See ya.
And that's going to wrap it up for today's edition of Locked On Illini. Thank you again all so much for over the weekend. We hit 2,000 subscribers. I sincerely appreciate it. 61% of you who are watching this aren't subscribed. So trust me, if you want to help the channel, and I don't ask for a single penny, it's absolutely free. The only thing I ask for in return is if you can make sure you hit that like button while you're watching and hit that subscribe button. Again, I got a lot of content for you this week. When it comes to Brett Bielema's press conferences over the weekend, it was a huge recruiting day for the Illini on Sunday at State Farm Center. I got a lot to talk about. I can't wait. You won't miss a minute as long as you're subscribed. Until next time, ILL. Love you guys.